Hello and welcome to UO Today. I'm Barbara Altman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guests today are Joanna Blendulf and Annalisa Pappano. Joanna, an early music specialist, teaches at the UO as an adjunct professor of musicology and at viola da gamba workshops across the country. She performs as a soloist and continuo player in leading period instrument ensembles throughout the U.S. and is currently with the Portland, Seattle, and Indianapolis Baroque Orchestras. Joanna is an active chamber musician, performing and touring with the Catacoustic Consort, American Baroque, Ensemble Mirable, and others. Annalisa is the artistic director of Catacoustic Consort. She is a highly sought-after performer of the lirone, the pardessus, and the viola da gamba. She teaches viola da gamba at the University of Cincinnati's College-Conservatory of Music and has taught at many early music workshops and as a guest lecturer at numerous universities. Annalisa performs with Baroque Northweset, the Oberlin Consort of Viols, the Les Paisirs Durables in Brussels, Belgium. She led the Catacoustic Consort to win the grand prize in the Naxos Early Music America Live Recording Competition in 2003. Joanna and Annalisa together as Catacoustic Consort presented a lecture demonstration and concert entitled Duets for Pardessus de Viol, the French Noblewoman's Instrument, on March 14th in the Girlinger Alumni Lounge on campus. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
You have a very busy schedule, so I'm especially appreciative that you took time to come today. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure.
I had the pleasure of hearing you perform in the fall, and I was very close up to the front, and one of the things that I immediately noticed was the very tight ensemble playing the two of you manage, and how you take the smallest cue from each other, the lift of an eyebrow, the tilt of the head. That's got to be the result of many years of playing together.
This is true.
Yeah. Could you tell us how you met and when?
Sure. We were teenagers. It must have been in the late 80s, I would say. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yep. Way back when.
Way back when. Yeah, and that's where we both started playing the viola da gamba at the Interlaken Arts Academy and the summer program there. So we met and started playing treble viol duets, and we just hit it off completely from the beginning.
And you've been performing together ever since?
Yes, we went to then university together and played together, and then this world of early music, as we call it, is pretty small and tight-knit, so we've played together in other concerts, and in my own concert series in Cincinnati, Joanna comes as much as I can get her.
Am I right to intuit that it's partly because of your long friendship that you can play so intuitively together?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think so.
Absolutely.
And we happen to be very good friends too, so that always helps.
So you can almost finish each other's sentences, I would guess.
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to start, you're holding your beautiful instruments, and I'd like to talk about those in a minute, but if we could start by just exploring what it means to be doing early music, quote unquote. In some of your materials, I read that the intent of the Catacoustic Consort is to recreate the sound of the music when it was originally performed. That's obviously a major challenge if we're talking about 250 or 300 years after the fact. Could you tell us how you go about trying to recreate that sound?
Yes, it's a real challenge because sound ideals from generation to generation change. If you think about the music that your parents or grandparents listened to, it's so different. Even if it's on similar instruments, it's so different than what we have today. So if you can imagine going back so many generations to the 18th, 17th, 16th centuries, where we don't have recordings or videos of the music, all we have are maybe written descriptions, we have instruction manuals, we have paintings that we can look at to study. It can present a real challenge. Even the instruments have changed so much. The instruments themselves, the strings, there's so much that one can study to learn about the music.
Right, exactly. You have to really investigate, sort of like a detective, to find out what might have gone on then.
So really you both have to take on a dual role. You need to be historians of music and musicologists, and you then need to perform what you discover, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And also really immersing oneself in the life and times of this music can really help. Reading literature from the period, reading about what was happening in society, religion, politics. It all can help to it helps you understand the music and gives a fuller picture. It can kind of paint a picture of what it was like then, and that all helps, I think.
That's part of what it is to give a historically informed performance, right? That's the phrase that's often used.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. But now, given how many vagaries there are, we can read about it and set it in its context. I would imagine that any 2 or 3 different consorts playing the same piece might produce it very differently.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I guess we're agreed on that.
Yes, yes, yes. We all have our own interpretations and, different ideas of, tempo and articulation, all those little details.
Even basics of sound production.
Right.
And I mean, you see that today, and from one violinist to the next, it's the same kind of thing as well.
That's a good reminder, actually. That makes good sense, yeah. So why are the 2 of you so devoted to early music performance?
Well, for me, I feel that when I was 14 or 15 years old and I was handed a viola da gamba, it was so much fun. And I feel like I found my voice with this instrument. It was just so much fun. That it just kind of clicked for me. I think it's probably similar for you.
The same, since we came from the same background. For me, it's just the sound of the gut strings compared to the steel strings of today. There's a warmer quality. And sometimes in a very haunting way. It's just very, very warm and inviting. So, yeah.
Well, it's clearly not an easy road to take, so you must feel passionate about it in order to pursue it as a career.
It's true. It's true.
Could we talk about your beautiful instruments a little bit? Would you tell us about the viola da gamba family and the pardessus that you're actually holding?
Sure, we can share this. Well, first, the viola da gamba family is, of course, a different family of instruments from the violin family. It's actually more part of the lute or guitar family, so that's why we have frets like a guitar, and also the backs of the instruments are completely flat, whereas the violin family's instruments curve out for added resonance, and of course the many strings, 5 or 6 or even 7 strings. Some of the bass viola da gambas have 7 strings, but our pardessus have 5.
Also, the viola da gamba, gamba in Italian is leg. So viola used to be kind of a generic term for any kind of stringed instrument, whether it's a guitar or a violin or a cello or a viola da gamba. And gamba, of course, leg, so you support the instrument with your legs or your knees. And another thing that's rather particular for the viola da gamba family is the bow hold. We have the underhand bow grip. So our fingers actually touch the hair versus something like this for violin or cello. You can probably do it better than I can, but so that is one thing that is especially for the viola da gamba.
Why did you choose to specialize in the pardessus in particular?
Oh gosh. Well, since we were young, I said before that we had played a lot of treble viol duets, and we came across pardessus music through that playing, and we thought, wow, it would be great to actually own instruments that this music was intended for.
And there are very few pardessus players in the world. It was very popular in the 18th century in France and Francophile parts of the world, but today, hardly anyone plays it. There are just a handful. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, you should describe where your instrument came from.
Yes, actually, this belonged to a lady who lives in Annapolis who found out that I was interested in pardessus. And because I came from a violin background, I was really interested in the treble end of the viola da gamba family. I kind of missed that high range. And viola da gamba is a family of instruments. So you have bass, which is low, tenor, alto, treble. And treble is kind of like high viola range, I suppose. And this is kind of a hybrid instrument that's a cross between a violin and a viola da gamba. So you can it was invented so ladies could play violin music in a socially accepted manner. And I'd heard about this, and I'd seen all this music and records about, like written records of pardessus playing, and I thought, oh, I just would love to do that. And this woman in Annapolis found out I was looking for an instrument, and she contacted me and said, hey, I have this instrument, you want to borrow it? Yes. and this is a very nice instrument. It's an original 1754 instrument. So I'm very happy and very fortunate to be playing this.
So it's on long-term loan from
Well,
the owner?
I'm actually in the process of purchasing it, but I'm very, very lucky to have stumbled across the instrument. And there are a lot of old pardessus around, even more than you would find old violas da gamba. If you go to Europe, there are tons of them in museums, and it's possible to find them. But I still consider myself very, very lucky to have this.
I can imagine. So Joanna, is yours a reproduction then?
It's a reproduction, exactly. A fantastic viola da gamba maker in Canada actually built this for his wife, Dominique Zuckerwitz. And she played it for a while, and I saw it at an exhibition. I was like, I must have this instrument.
And so he or she was willing to give it
to
you?
Yes. So, yeah, I'm very happy with it. Yeah.
And there are nice blends together as well, so that's...
Visually or
well,
in their
I
sound
think
as
both,
well?
but also especially in sound.
Right.
So.
But one thing they have in common is the striping in the back. And this was very popular because, you know, as this was an instrument of fashion, and it belonged to women of fashion who had, you know, stripes in their dresses. The builders wanted to mimic that style. The instrument's like the ultimate accessory in a way.
I see, a fashion accessory of
sorts. Of sorts. And that's why the scrolls are so, you know, intricately carved. So it's really a work of art as well as an instrument to play.
They are objects of great beauty. It must give you real satisfaction just to hold them and look at them as well as play them.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Annalisa, you said that the pardessus was created to be an instrument that a noblewoman could play in a suitable manner. Could we explore that a little further?
Yes. Well, in the day, in 18th century France, violins had certain connotations. They were a professional person's instrument. Historically, they evolved from a professional kind of aspect. So if you were a member of society or the aristocracy or nobility, you didn't want to play the violin. That was something that was played in the bar room or dance music, or it wasn't really appropriate for a person, especially a woman, to play. And also people like to say, well, it drew the attention to the upper part of the torso, and
or contorted the face,
or you contorted your face while you played
because of the position of the head and the chin when you're playing the violin.
Yeah, and it just wasn't all proportioned right. It just, you know, this is not, you know, you liked a certain amount of symmetry and balance, and this was just a very elegant way to play an instrument.
I suppose we have to imagine long, full skirts, so
Absolutely.
the question of holding an instrument between your knees is not an issue? Even
Not
for
at
the
all.
proper
We were even wondering about this earlier, how they did this with all these tight, restrictive clothes on and heavy wigs, and that would be
They
interesting.
would have had good posture, I would imagine.
Yes, I imagine they would have had to. It looks as though everything was set for symmetry and uprightness and decorum.
Yes.
What about the repertoire for this instrument? Is there an extensive repertoire?
There is. Actually, there's a lot. It was a very, very popular instrument for about 40 years in France. Some in Canada, some parts of Belgium. I think there are at least maybe 200 records of 200 printed collections of music for pardessus. You'll also see on the title pages of music, this music can be played on pardessus, violin, or whatever. It'll just sell more music. So it's not like it was just for, the music was just for pardessus, but they wanted to make money, these publishers. And
so you do have things to choose from. You're not dealing with 8 particular pieces and nothing more.
There's a lot of music. In fact, in France, part of the, Part of the reason why this instrument was invented is because the music of Arcangelo Corelli, this Italian violinist, was so extremely popular in France, and the woman wanted to play this music, but they couldn't because it was on violin. Mm-hmm. So that's one theory of why this instrument was created, to play the music of Corelli. So we can play violin music, and one of my very good friends in Brussels has done a lot of research in the Paris Library, and he's given me a lot of wonderful music that I can play, and mm-hmm. we can play together, and mm-hmm. there are a lot of possibilities.
So right from the archives, even unpublished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like to ask if you would play us a little something. Mm-hmm. I know you've come prepared. Could you tell us what you're going to play? Either of you?
Actually, yes. It's from a collection of a composer named Abbé Le Fils, and I believe this is one of these collections that's for violin or pardessus. And it's a minuet and we discovered it's from a piece by Rameau. The original is by Rameau, and it's maybe an opera or a ballet or something like mm-hmm. this. It's orchestral music arranged for two pardessus. And you find a lot of this music for pardessus is arrangements of opera arias or really popular tunes of the day that the women could take home and play with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
So
I see. Reproduce what they'd heard,
mm-hmm.
perhaps at a public performance.
Exactly.
And this is second half of the 18th century?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
about 1760-ish.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's listen to the piece. That was wonderful. You've been rearranged, you're reseated. Thank you so much for playing. I think it gives people who missed the concert a chance to get a little glimpse and a little soundbite of what you do. I'm struck by the virtuosity of the music. So these were noble women, amateur musicians, but amateur only in the sense that they weren't being paid for the job. They must have been very accomplished musicians.
True. I think they had a lot of
Absolutely.
time to
Yes.
practice.
That's a good point. A noble woman would have had the leisure to invest the time to become very accomplished at the instrument.
I believe so.
I would bet it's challenging even for you when you start working on a new piece.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Much of it is
Yes.
not sight readable.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So that gives us a little hint at how much preparation goes into learning
A lot of
and
practice.
putting together a piece like that.
Yeah.
The sound is so very different from what concert goers of more modern music might know as a stringed instrument. How did the modern line of instruments evolve from this generation?
Well, they're sort of evolving at the same time as these instruments, but their lineage continued well beyond that of the viola da gamba family, just because of the pure sound production factor. You know, the violin family instruments could project so well, and there were actually comments right around the time that, especially the pardessus went to the sideline about how you know, playing this instrument in a very large hall, you know, it's as if it's not even there. I mean, it just doesn't sound like anything.
Yes, and it was at the time that this instrument died out in Paris that you see this evolution of huge concert halls and the democratization of the concert-going experience, where, you know, if you think of the French Revolution, you know, everyone is equal, and so everyone could go and hear classical music. So you needed big spaces to accommodate everyone. And these instruments are very quiet, and they just couldn't send their sound out to the back of the hall. So that's when you see violins and cellos kind of coming more on the scene, and there were different things that happened to them to make them project even louder.
Does that explain what you said earlier, that this was an instrument that was very popular for only about 40 years? Was it the change in the culture of music production and
That's
social?
part of it,
Yeah, I
yes.
think so.
Now, I'm very curious about your plans with the Catacoustic Consort. You won that very prestigious prize in 2003. Here we are 6 years later. What's coming up for the two of you?
Our first recording.
Yes, Joanna and I will make a
Yes.
recording of
Yeah,
music
pardessus music.
for two pardessus.
A whole album,
A
just of
whole
pardessus
album.
music?
Yes,
That will be an endeavor.
it sure will.
It will
but
be a
I
lot
think,
of fun.
I think we're ready and excited for it. We're having concert tours. We're doing another performance in Cincinnati, also concerts in San Francisco. So people are finding out about this program, and it's really exciting. I think there's something about this music and this instrument that kind of captures people's imagination. So
Where are you going to do the recording?
in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati. That's where you're based, right,
Yes.
Annalisa? Right, I see. So we were joking earlier about the accumulation of frequent flyer miles. I can see
Yes.
this happening at a great rate.
Yes, yes.
Now, with the consort, do you play exclusively pardessus music, or do you play other music as well?
No.
All kinds.
All types of music. I would love it to be a lot more pardessus music, but my audience in Cincinnati needs to have a little bit more variety. So I bring Joanna out, and last January we did a concert of music. There was a movie about the viola da gamba, All the Mornings of the World, that came out about 20 years ago, and we did a concert of music from the movie. Along with a free screening of the movie, and we've done a lot of viola da gamba ensemble music. I'd love her to come out and play her Baroque cello. It's a real treat to have Joanna come to Cincinnati, because she's a real gem. She's one of the best performers of early music, I'm convinced, in the country.
Thank you.
So it's a real treat.
I can see the two of you have a lot of esteem for each other. No wonder you work so well together. You also do some vocal music as part of the consort repertoire, right?
Absolutely. That's some of my favorite. I love working with singers.
So you bring in vocalists for...
Absolutely. In fact, for our pardessus program in Cincinnati, we'll be working with a singer. As I said before, there are arrangements of opera arias. So we'll do, there's some arrangements of opera arias for soprano and pardessus, so we'll do some of that, and a lot of vocal music, catacoustic.
What are some of the challenges of programming as artistic director? I can understand from what you've already said that you need to balance the programs. How do you try to set up a season?
I find that if I believe in the program and if I find it exciting, then it's not hard to convince other people that the programming is exciting as well. I think the only challenge is, I don't think there are any challenges except for, I mean, the obvious, which is financial, having enough money to do everything that you want or bring in, forces of hundreds. But, I don't think there really are.
Have you built a loyal following in Cincinnati?
Yes.
Recognize faces at your concerts now?
Yes, and they recognize the musicians. They ask, "Oh, how's Joanna? How's this person?" And they found out that Joanna is engaged, for example, and they say, "Oh, when's the big day?" And so
it's a very personable.
Yes, it's
audience.
Like a family, actually.
You have a following.
Mm-hmm.
Joanna, I wanted to ask you before we close. You teach here at the U of O.
Yes, and I teach privately here, both here and in Portland.
And which instruments do you teach? Do you teach the pardessus?
I teach everything, modern cello, Baroque cello, all the instruments in the viola da gamba family. So, I mean, I just moved to Eugene about 1.5 years ago, and yeah, it's been wonderful getting to meet people. There's quite an early music scene here. It's a little bit underground, but it's yeah, it's just wonderful to be here.
So you're finding connections both in Eugene and in Portland?
Yes.
Do you have any trouble convincing students to adopt your love of early music?
Actually, no. It's quite easy. Once they hear the sound of the instrument, they're kind of attracted to it. Sort of like when I first encountered it, it's really wonderful.
There's an intimacy to it, I think, if that's an appropriate word.
Yes.
That must be quite compelling when you first get to hear it.
I think so.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. It was a real treat to meet both of you in person.
Thank
You're
you.
very eloquent spokespeople for your instruments.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We have been speaking with Joanna Blendulf and Annalisa Pappano, early music specialists who perform on period instruments as the Catacoustic Consort. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.